pause our recording. And this is our workshop or webinar on healing racism, and it's called Woke Work. And I thank you all for being here and joining me for this 4-hour session. Got a lot of ground that I want to cover with you. But before I get started, I want us to, it's like we're all just kind of whoosh in the room together, and to just take a deep breath right now. Just take a minute to kind of center ourselves and just breathe. You can do it with your eyes open or closed, but just take a moment to just breathe and be present in this moment. Many of us have a lot of stuff going on. And the other piece is, if you could be in agreement to open up your heart to receive new information, not from your head, but from your heart. Because that's where real transformation happens. The head understands, but the heart understands. And that's what really activates transformation, is when we understand something. So I want you to move from the cognitive brain into the heart brain and allow yourself to be open for whatever comes through. Some of this information you may know already, some of it may be, and you will know that you know it because you will affirm it. You know, your spirit will affirm it. It's like, it'll feel familiar. It's like, I knew that. Yep. And some of it may be a distant knowing, something that you don't, it's like, wow, that makes sense, but let me kind of chew that up and put that into myself, because I've never thought of it that way. So hopefully you'll get some ahas. If you have, hopefully you have something to write with, because I've got some slides, but I don't like to do a whole lot of, be too slide heavy, because then I can't be in flow. So I want to be in flow. And so I have some backup slides. If I need to pull them up, I will. I do have a couple of videos that I want to show throughout this process. And that way you can, we can also debrief that as well. So getting into it, I think that's all the housekeeping information that I need. And I'll keep looking to make sure that I can monitor the room. But again, I want to say welcome. And I know that you're all here because we're talking about race. We're talking about how do we heal? How do we shift this conversation? I purposely put in the description for people who are overwhelmed, because I know that if you are overwhelmed, it's when we are overwhelmed, that's when we are moved to do something different. It's just like when if you are in a bad relationship or a toxic relationship, or if a woman is being abused in a situation, you can't rescue her out of that until she is ready to be rescued. And then she is ready to make the change, because change is, it's never really about availability. It's always about motivation. And usually it's when we are in pain that we are motivated to do something different. So whether you are mentally in pain individually or collectively, is that maybe I mean, if you're watching the news, we're in the middle of a pandemic, if you didn't know that, which is apocalyptic on many levels. Feels like we're in the apocalypse. As I joke, which might not even be really a joke, and I think in Indiana they had the locusts have already come and gone, and next probably will be the frogs, and who knows whatever is next. But it's got all of our collective attention. It's got all of our collective attention because it affects all of us. There's nobody that is not involved in this conversation around race. And I think what took it to the next level, around race, because we know what's happening in the country, that got all of our attention with George Floyd and his murder. And because we were in a pandemic, everybody got to witness it. And they got to not only witness it, but they got to witness both sides of it. They got to witness the totality of the experience. And sometimes that's what has been missing in the past, is that we haven't seen the totality of the experience. We only see one side of it, or we hear the end result of something that's happened. But in that 8 minutes and 47 seconds, 49 or whatever that seconds was, we got to see the entire experience being played out. And it affected all of us because we could connect into it. Regardless of where you were on the spectrum, it affected you. It affected you if you were a mom. It affected you if you were African American. It affected you if you were white. That could have been your uncle. That could have been your father. That could have been your neighbor. That could have been someone that you know. So it connected us into the story because we all knew that, you know, okay, we got to change this. And it resonated and rippled across the world. It was the first time that protests were being done in Seoul, Korea, and in tandem in Australia and Japan and South Africa and all over the world. We were resounding the same thing. It's enough. We have got to change this storyline. We cannot keep circling the drain. And so because of that, that has been the impetus for change. But what's happening now is that people are focused on the problem, and we're just getting more and more angry. We're getting more and more frustrated with each other because there's no new information being added to the conversation. This same conversation is reminiscent to what was happening in the 70s and probably the 60s and the 80s and the 90s. And here we go once again, and here it is 2020. So how do we do something different? And to me, the reason that this conversation continues to circle in this way, in this circular kind of energy, is because we have not injected any new information. You know, we are becoming aware, many white people are becoming aware of history from different perspectives, but we've not injected any new information into the story to elevate the consciousness of this story. What happens is that the more we know, the more it then separates us, because then we feel even more isolated from one another. It just makes us mad or depressed or shameful or guilty or disconnected. And it's not uplifting because we have not entered into a conversation with more information. So what and it just continues to create division and trauma. And the trauma is experienced by all of us. There's nobody that is exempt from the trauma because you're connected to humanity. And humanity right now, we are in trauma. And so part of the reason that I wanted to do this and offer this workshop was because I'm not in trauma around anything right now. And it's not because I feel like I am feelings of aloofness or disconnection. I am very much connected to humanity. But I made the choice and the decision and the practice to inject myself into a higher consciousness, into a different realm that gives me hope and vision and excitement about the future, and the excitement not just as a Black woman, but as a human being, and the possibilities that we have with each other and how we can heal this conundrum that we're in. And so many of you, most of you are here because you read my book, What Color Is Your Soul? And if you've read it, if you haven't read the whole book, no worries. I'm here. So I want to give you some of that information and share with you how I move in the world, and how what this level of consciousness has created for me. So we're going to move through this. The first hour, these first maybe 30, 40 minutes, I'll be sharing just some kind of baseline stuff to get us ready. And then we're going to lift up through this vibrational work that my husband is going to offer us. And then the third hour, we're going to look at, because we'll be looking at it from a different space, a different vibration, then we're going to look at racism and colorism and all of those things from an elevated space, and not, we're not going to just go right into it, because on that vibration, we'll be just adding to that vibration. So we're going to lift ourselves to a higher vibration and then look at it from there. And then once we look at it from there, we're going to talk in the last hour about how we can envision a different future. What can we do moving forward? So the first thing that I want to say, and if we can be in agreement, is what I believe is that we are all first and foremost spiritual beings. And what that means is that we are eternal beings. And that's connected to not only our physical self, but also science. Just science will tell you that we are more than what we think we are. All religious traditions will have some semblance of the afterlife, some connection to the afterlife, and knowing that as physical beings, you are made up of energy. You are not, this bodysuit that I have on is not even real. If it was broken down into its molecular structure, I'd just be some moving particles that are oscillating at the same vibrational rate. And so thus it makes it look solid. It makes me look solid, but I am not a solid, and neither are you. We are wave particles that are moving and oscillating at a different rate. And so what happens as a spiritual being, because we are tribal, because we are family oriented, and we are culturally and ethnically connected to our groups, we are vibrating with our groups at that rate. So there is then what comes from that is a collective consciousness that moves the group, because then it becomes group think, because it's like we're all tuned in to a radio station. Like in my car, I have my favorite radio station. Thankfully now, I have satellite, so I still have my favorite stations that I tune into regularly. When my son gets in my car, he wants a different vibration. So he turns the station to his group, to the frequency that and some of it, I can't even understand it. He can, he's listening to the words, and I'm like, what are they saying? And he's like, whatever, mom, but he's on a different frequency. And so some of it I don't understand. When I put on my music, some of it he will understand, but it's, he's not interested. Some of it we can agree. But that's how collective consciousness works. And marketers know that. When you get into marketing and psychology, they understand that. And so that's why when you do those surveys or whatever, they're trying to figure out your demographic. They're trying to figure out what group you're in, so that then they can market to you specifically. They have been, for instance, AARP has been hounding me since I was 49 years old. They want me in that group. And I have been refusing them since I was 40. I'm almost 60. And I have been refusing them since I was in my late 40s, because they want me to be in that consciousness and thinking about aging and all of the things that need to happen typically as you age. And I have been in refusal because I don't want to be in that consciousness. I don't want to be in the consciousness that I am old and life is over. So until they get a really cool swag bag or something, I'm gonna stay out. So, but that's how collective consciousness works. So on that level, there's also a collective consciousness for white people, but we have identified as white culture and as Black culture, Hispanic culture. Any group that you're in has a collective consciousness. And so as you tune into that consciousness, just like a radio station, you tune into that consciousness and it broadcasts all of the things that are happening in that. It's just like when you turn on a radio station, they have different programming throughout the day. There's continuous programming, whether you turn that radio off or keep it on, that it's still broadcasting. Those waves are still coming through. It doesn't matter whether how it affects you. Sometimes when you're consciously listening to it, then you are aware. When you're not conscious, it is subconsciously broadcasting to you. It's just like when you're in an elevator or in a department store way back before we were social distancing, when you could go to a store. But they would play subliminal messages so that, to kind of, work on your subconscious. And some of those messages were to try to steer you to buy certain things. Commercials do that all the time. So that you're constantly getting messages is the point. And in that, because you are attuned to a certain frequency, sometimes you can't even hear or be aware of other frequencies. And so what has happened with culturally, especially the Black and white experience, when white people connect into the collective consciousness of whiteness, it is a different vibration than the collective consciousness of Black people. And so that's why when you're in a situation, sometimes it's like we're speaking two different languages. Because we are on two different frequencies. We're on two different radio stations, and and so sometimes it's not always harmonious, because what you're playing may clash with what's in me. Another example for that is, have you ever been thinking about a song and you turn the radio on and there it is? Because you're already tuned into that frequency, even invisibly. So just know that that's what's happening. And that's why we have a hard time connecting because everything is vibration. We're vibratory beings. And so because we are, this earth suit makes us feel like we are physical beings, and we're not. We are spiritual beings. We are spiritually here to do whatever we came here to do, but we're eternal beings. And that's the biggest point that I can't emphasize that enough, because it is the foundation of everything. It's the foundation of how we shift the narrative of everything, is understanding that we are not physical beings. And in that understanding, if we really understand that, we also know that energy can never be destroyed. It can only transform. So energy is not, if we are energetic beings, we can never be destroyed. Thus, death is not real. Because how can you kill something that is not able to, that is eternal? Now we can change forms, but we are eternal beings, which means that death itself is an illusion. It's not even real. The second illusion that kind of keeps us in this conundrum is the fact that we don't realize that there is only one energy source. We are all connected to the same source, the same divine frequency. It's just like probably some molecular biologist or some scientist would be able to really explain to us what energy is. All I know is that when I come into my house, I can flick on the lights and energy runs through it. Don't ask me how to explain how energy works, but we know that it's all one frequency. It's one continuous that lights up my house, that lights up your house, that lights up everybody's houses. And your car, all of that is energy, and it's flowing on the same frequency. Now, I am not a scientist, so I'm trying to explain this in layman's terms because it's important for us to understand it. And when we understand it, then we can have a different experience with one another. When we understand that none of this is that we are vibratory beings that are eternal, but we're all connected to the same source, which means that I am connected to this divine source, as are you. You know, the analogy that I use is the ocean. You know, if we were to, we all have, first of all, we're all ocean anyway. We're 70% water. Our bodies are made up of 70% water. And that's probably why many of us enjoy and yearn to be at the ocean or the beach, or a nice tub of water, or in the shower, or connected to water or a lake or something, because it's part of who we are. It is part of, it resonates. The vibration of water resonates with us. And so when we find some peace and calm when we are with our group, which is water. And so when we look at the ocean, if we were to look at the ocean and say, wow, this is just, the ocean is, we love the ocean. And if I were to take a cup and scoop up some ocean water and I take it all the way back to my house, is it still ocean water? Even though I've separated it from the ocean source, is it still ocean water? And so by a nod of heads, I think, yeah, yes, it's still ocean water, even though it's not connected to the big source of ocean. And so that's the same thing that we are, even though we are, so everything that's in that cup is also in the ocean. And the other cool thing about that, and science have done all these cool experiments, where if you do something molecularly to that cup of water, it also, or better yet, if you do something to the ocean, it will also be reflected in the cellular DNA of what's in the cup. Because even though you physically take it out of the ocean, it is still connected to the ocean. It is still connected. So there's nothing you can do to change that molecular connection. And so we are all small little cup sizes of divine source energy, you know, and part of why we don't feel so powerful a lot of times is because we've got so much stuff that is polluting our water. That's what's polluting your cup. If you don't feel powerful like the ocean, you got to look at, well, what's in my cup? What's in my cup that is causing me to not feel connected, or causing me to not vibrate on the level of divine source, the source that is of energy. And so it would be like, you know, and we feel that, you know, when you look at the ocean and how we pollute the ocean. So every time people throw trash in the ocean, it's lowering the vibration of the ocean. You don't want to get in water that's all dirty and muddy, because it weighs you down. You don't feel good. You feel good when you're in clean water, because that raises your vibration, that raises you, that elevates your spirit. So what we have to do around this conversation is, one, look at what is polluting my water, what is polluting my vibration that has me feeling overwhelmed and dejected and shameful or scared or detached. What is it that has come between me and all that I can be in this conversation and around this human experience that I'm having? And so how we get to a different consciousness around that is, one, I keep saying vibration, and hopefully I've belabored it enough so that you understand what I mean by that. And so when we have that, the only person that I can shift and change is me. I'm responsible for my little cup of water. It doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. That's the only thing that I can change, that I can shift. And so this workshop, this webinar is not about what do we need to do to change everybody else. It is how can I shift my frequency so that I am vibrating at a different level, and then people who want to interact with me I will make a choice to either come down to their frequency, or they will have to rise to where I am. And hopefully you will make the decision to help to have people to rise to your frequency, because you've elevated it and it's inspiring, and you want people will be like, wow, what's she listening to? I want to get some of that. What station are you on that's got you at a level where your energy is just electric? You know, it's inspiring. You cannot change anybody under duress. You know, it has to be by choice and not force, even yourself. So I'm going to try to have a convincing argument for you to raise your vibration and to help you to see it in a different way. And so let me take a breath here. The other piece that I want to say, and I'm going to show you a quick slide, is that, you know, part of what we also don't live in the consciousness of is the fact that we are connected. There is multiple realities going on at the same time. That I am a physical being, you know, because my cells are oscillating at the same rate as are yours. So it makes us all look physical. And so we interact with each other on that physical level, but we're also spiritual beings, which makes us that gives us the ability to tap into a higher consciousness. That's why we find such solace in meditation and yoga and Tai Chi and those kinds of practices, prayer, song, rituals, those kinds of things connect us back up to a higher vibration. It connects us back up to source. You know, that's why in meditation, you're to clear your mind so that you can then be connected to a bigger consciousness. So that's why the vibratory part of us, that's what connects us to source. But the piece that around racism that keeps us kind of bogged down is that in that physicalness, we have a DNA and a molecular structure. And I am, just as you are, made up of, when I came here on this planet, I didn't just hatch out of an egg and, you know, or poof, you know, the stork didn't bring me. There's, you know, none of that. I am made up of literally the cells of my mother. Her body generated me. Out of her molecular structure, I was created. She was created by the same process, the DNA process from her mother. And not only my mother, but I got my father's DNA in there. So I'm made up of the molecular structure of both of them, and they, them, and on and on and on to the beginning of time. That's the only way that you can get in and out of this planet is through the body of a woman. And I say out because she can take you out too. That's what my mother used to tell you. I bring you in this world, I can take you out. So that molecular structure is in me. So just like the ocean on that level, what has happened in my mother's life also affects me on a cellular level, because I am made up of her. That's what they call when they say generational trauma or generational stuff. It's because it's in me. I am made up of her and her mother and her mother and her mother. So the trauma that is in her, that was in her, that was in her, that was in her, that was in him, that was in him, that was in generational, it is in me on this journey because it's part of my molecular structure here within this family. Now it's like if I were to have, you know, we have these computer systems, and we have a shell, the hardware. You know, my husband is also a software, an engineer, an IT engineer. So, you know, when you're building a computer, you can have all kinds of frameworks. You can have all kinds of the box, the shell for that, that computer. But what makes it unique, that's why Apple has Apple, and, you know, the PC are different because of what they put inside the hardware, what they put inside. That's what makes it different. So we all show up, our bodies are like the hardware, the genetic hardware that goes on for time and time infinitum, that my mother had her hardware, and then her mother had hardware and all of that. And so I pop in as a spirit being into that hardware. My software is installed into it. And so now I've got to deal with the programming that's already in it, plus my own soul work, my own soul, I guess, package, you know. And so I don't want to get so deep that your brain is like hurting. It's like, oh God, you know, I don't understand it. But this is just kind of a level that I just want you to kind of put it in, pack it in. You know, it's just like a squirrel. Be a squirrel right now. Just pack it in your jaws, and then you can chew it up later. Just pack it in and just know that, you know, let me just kind of take some time and unpack this and see if I understand that. Because when we understand that our connections run deeper than what we believe, then we can also not take everything so personal. And we can also, when we don't take it so personal, we also do take it personal, that it is my responsibility to heal. Because just like that ocean and the water in the ocean, if I heal the molecular structure within me, it reverberates on everybody that has that same molecular structure. It changes, it shifts. So my healing not only helps my ancestors, but it helps my son and his children. I'm taking that trauma out of this gene pool, out of this particular gene pool. I'm removing the trauma, whatever it is, whether I can give voice to it, whether it's my trauma or my ancestral trauma. Once I remove it from the planet, basically. So that's why our healing is so important, because if you can't do it for you, when I'm not motivated to heal for myself, I heal for my grandchildren that aren't even here. Because there are things that I don't want them to even have to deal with on a level. You know, I'll give you a quick example that in my, you know, I grew up with two parents who were born in Alabama. My father was a cross-country truck driver from Mobile, Alabama. My mama was from Daphne, Alabama. And when they connected with each other, it was during the 50s. They came up to Chicago to find a better life. And they didn't have their support system. And so I grew up with 6 other siblings in a household where my father, I love my father. God rest his soul. He transitioned in 2004. But him and my mom had a very interesting relationship. They didn't come from parents that, you know, went to psychologists or, you know, family therapist or anything like that. They were in survival mode. And so what they brought to their family structure was the habits and behaviors that they had learned from their parents, and especially around conflict resolution. How do we resolve conflict? And so what would happen typically, and became a pattern, is that they would there was no middle ground. They would either fight or flight, which means it was either explosive or silence. And as children, we learned how to maneuver ourselves within that experience. They would stop talking to each other for weeks and talk, you know, politely, you know, if you got 7 kids, so you got to say some things. But we would be able to tell the energy was different, because when they had some kind of conflict, it would escalate, and because they didn't have any healthy ways to do it, they would just literally verbally throw up on each other, and not realizing that the kids, even though we weren't physically in there, we would get some of the shrapnel from the from the stuff, and it would fill us. And it would fill us to the point that that was our learned way of conflict resolution. And everybody has their family patterns of how families deal with that. But I learned fight or flight. And so as an adult, my default setting was always to go to a space of, if I did not want to be in conflict, I would just remove myself, either physically, emotionally, or in some way. I would make myself unavailable. And when I got married, I realized that I don't want to, because that molecular pattern is in me, I want to shift that. I want to change that structure, because I don't want my son to have to learn that way of being and learn how to, so I've got to level up. I've got to figure out, I've got to learn some new tools. And so I went on a personal, that was one of the impetus for me to go on this long personal development journey, because I wanted to learn some different skills. I wanted to learn something different. And I waited a long time to have a child. I didn't have my son until I was 41, because I wanted to do it right. And I probably still should have waited, because I don't know if I got it completely right, but he's a good kid. Even in spite of me, he's a good kid. But I realized that if I don't change something, he's going to learn the pattern that I learned, and we're going to continue this generationally. And so I made the point, and thankfully I have a partner who was on a similar journey. He had his own family dysfunctional way. And so the two of us came together to heal those things. That's why it shows up, because it shows up for us to heal it. And so whatever the conflict is in your life, whatever you're seeing it so that you can heal it. You know, it's not just showing up to make you miserable, but it's showing up so that you can then do something different about it, whatever your pain point is. And for me, thankfully, my husband and I both did a lot of work around, we don't get it perfect, but we've done a lot of work around communication, especially when we're in pain, because hurt people hurt people. When you're in pain, that's usually when you're going to be your true self. You're going to be the self that really will show up. And speaking of that, I know I said we're going to end at 2:45, but I want to quickly get this other point in before we take a break. And I want to share my screen with you. Hopefully I'm not moving too fast, but make your notes and we can unpack this when we have a break or during the other session. I want to show you share my screen with you, because I think that will help you to, if you're visual, it might help you to really understand this last point before we take a break that I want to share with you. And bear with me as I do this. All right, so hopefully you can see my screen. And please nod if you can see it, just so that I know that I did it right. All right, thank you, Richard. I appreciate you. All right, so when two people meet, there's a saying that when two people meet, there's really 6 people present. There's the person as they think they are, who the other person thinks they are, and then who they really are. And so for the remainder of this discussion, I want you to think in those terms, that you're not, maybe you are schizophrenic, but there's 3 parts of you that can be activated at any time. And I have affectionately named these 3 parts: our representative, our mirror me, and our VIP. Now quickly, and just as Cliff Notes, our representative self is the self that usually shows up in the world. It is our ego self. It is our protective self. Most people will say when they're in a relationship, you don't really, you want to be with someone who you can be yourself with. You know, I like this person because I can let down my guard and I can just be me. So we're always seeking that. So who are we when we're not being us? We are usually in our representative self. We're in that part of us that acts as um, our press secretary. It acts as our attorney, our bodyguard, our executive assistant. It is the part of us that shows up to protect who we really are. Because I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to be hurt. So I'm gonna show you who I am. I've got a representative for work when I'm at the job. I have a representative when I am at in certain circles. I show up in my representative self, but it's not who I really am. It's not the true me. So that's our representative self. And we're going to talk later about that. I just want to introduce them to you. The second one is our mirror me. And that is literally because we are one, we are really one from one source. We are literally reflections or projections of each other. And what I experience with you, we could be, you know, like if somebody were to come into the room right now, into this Zoom room right now and create some havoc or do something and then leave. Each of us would have a different response if I said, what happened? What just happened? Who was that? I bet you if we went around to everybody would explain it in a different way because one person saw it through, you're seeing it through your own experience and lens. He seemed aggressive. Well, maybe because I'm on the lookout for aggressive behavior. So I'm going to tune into that part. Oh, that person seemed nice because I'm in tune and trying to find something in that. So we're going to experience everything. Everything is a reflection or projection. I'm projecting onto you what I believe you are, or you're showing up. And so everybody is like a window or a door. You know, it's either showing you who you are or it's accessing you to something else. All right. It's either, I'm sorry, not a window or a door. Scratch that. A window or a mirror. That's what I meant to say. So it either gives you insight into something or you get to see yourself. And again, every experience that you're having is you are tuned into that frequency. You're tuned into that frequency. So it is going to show up in some way. You know, it's just like real quick, real funny. And some of you older people will understand this analogy of like Mae West back in the, you know, when you used to watch the old movies and Mae West. Dolly Parton kind of has it a little bit, but Mae West had it. She kind of, even when I was little, I was like, what does she have that men are just like fall, other than a big breast? But other than that, it was her energy was just so that, you know, you've met women like that, Marilyn Monroe kind of energy that women will, Beyonce has that men will just fall over them for themselves because of the energy that she's exuding. It's that, you know, that of whatever it is, it's that kind of energy. And so what we see in that is whatever we want to put on that, it's all energy. It's all energy and how we move into the world. So everything is either reflecting or we're projecting onto a person what we think that energy should be, what we think, what that exudes. And so people pick up on our energy. That was my point, was that people pick up on that energy so that like when people, a woman is in that in her energy, men want to give her things. They want, you know, everybody wants to shower her. You know, rich people who don't need perks, they're always being given perks because of that energy. But we're projecting onto them. We're projecting a certain thing, and most of us are attracted. The only reason we're attracted to something is because it's who we are, or it reflects something that we want to be. That's why we like certain people, is because they're either a direct reflection of who we are, or they epitomize something that we want to be, that we want to aspire to. We want to level up. We want to be on that level. And so we try to connect ourselves to that energy. That's why, it's crazy when you go to a concert or something that people want to touch a celebrity because they want some of that. They want to level up to that energy. They're projecting that onto, I want some of that because I think you'll help me to rise up to that, which is not true. But at any rate, the last one that I want to share with you is what's really important and which kind of brings back full circle everything that I've said. And that's the VIP. That's the vibrationally intelligent perspective. And I've shortened it to VIP. And it's congruent with what we think of when we say VIP, a very important person. But that VIP self is that vibrationally intelligent perspective. It is the part of you that is pure ocean water. It is the part of you that is divine source. Your soul is not wounded. Your mind may be wounded. Your heart may be wounded, but that vibrationally intelligent part of you is not wounded. It is divine source. It is like, that's why we like babies, because they are pure divine source, unadulterated. Their water is not polluted. And so that is the level that this conversation is. I want us to, we all live in that representative self, in the mirror me. When we talk about racism and all of those things that divide us into these categories of different cultures. The truth is we are all vibrationally intelligent beings emanating from the same source. We are one. When we link hands with each other, when we link, and the gateway to our VIP is through our heart. That's why I don't want to take you on that's why this next segment will be an experience for you to raise your vibe. You don't have to do anything except receive it. It's just like if there's a barrier on the ocean, and if you put a barrier up, that water that you can't flow through. But if you open it up, all you have to do is just receive it. And it will elevate you. It will open up the portals to open up your heart chakra. It will open up that heart space. So then you can receive new information. And now we can operate on a soul level. Yes? So this next, I'm going to give us a break. And I'm going to stick around. And if you want to unmute, we can have a talk. If you want to go get some water, if you want to get your headset, use the bathroom, whatever you need to do, feel free to do that. And we'll come back at 3 o'clock, and my husband, Rod, is going to take us on a journey. All right?
I do have one quick question.
Mm-hmm.
What you just went through, you are recording that?
And take
All right. And again, I'm Jaha-Echols, and I'm honored to be here to share this with you, because it's so important right now. When this whole pandemic started, one of the things that really came through to me was that I judged that most people don't even know how to envision something different. And what I mean by that is different, really different. And in order to do that, I really dug in on a path of utilizing sound to actually project my vision out into the world. So before I dive that deep, though, I want to ask a couple of questions. And since most of you are on camera, you can just raise your hand. And if you're not on camera, you can, I guess, say something. But are most of you familiar with the concept of resonance? Like resonance in music, resonance with materials. Okay, so we've got some people who are. And so Niambi was talking a lot about things that have to do with resonance, like the fact that if people are on different frequencies, that they can't really hear each other. And the fact that what's out on the airwaves influences anybody who's tuned into that airwave and those types of things. So I'm gonna read something real quick because this is speaks directly to what Niambi was speaking of. Just give me 1 second. Here we go. And so Niambi introduced you to the concept of the VIP, the mirror me, and the representative. And so what I want to do is to help you to be able to connect your mind to your VIP, which is your true spiritual self, and your VIP is fully conscious all the time of the direct connection to oneness and the purpose and possibilities that come with that awareness. So that's how powerfully aware and connected your VIP is. So, you could call that your soul core or whatever you want to call it, but we have chosen to label it your vibrationally intelligent. And so in our mind lives the representative, and the representative is tied strictly to our current human existence. Even as our VIP continues in energy and vibration after our human existence, the representative only exists in our human body. So we are in our, conscious awake state. We are really influenced by our representative. And so I won't go into that because Niambi's introduced it and she's going to talk more about that later. So my job is to get you in the mindset and connect both sides of your brains so that you're at optimal receptivity to ideas, and also that those ideas are being processed in a balanced way. And so resonance, there are different types of resonance, but okay, let me get back to this first. Let me finish this and then I'll finish with resonance. I'm getting ahead of myself. That's the mad scientist in me. All right, the brain is just going. All right, so in order to connect our minds to our VIP, entrainment is necessary. And everybody here is, even if you aren't aware of how you've used entrainment, entrainment is prayer, chanting is entrainment. Actually, even our daily rhythm is entrainment. Anything that we do constantly actually becomes entraining, and sound and vibration can be utilized to entrain our bodies and our minds. If you really, and I won't assume everybody here is, studied up on a religion and all that, but all of the ancient religions, the prayers that were offered were always sung. So they basically were really syllables and sounds that were put to melody. And so it was really the intonation, the intervals between the notes that really gave the prayers their power. And so our ancestors already knew the power of sound. I mean, if you're like me and grew up in the Western world, then you have at least some familiarity with the Bible. And in the very beginning, it says, God said the word was sound. And so sound is kind of like our primal language. I mean, when babies come here, when they need to express something, they don't have words. They use what I've come to know as primal sounds. Ooh, oh, ah, oh. And so we have lost a lot of that, because we, in our society, we as adults, we can't walk around making primal sounds, but the primal sounds is part of what can help entrain us to be in a better state of listening, and training ourselves to practice deep listening, because that's where the solutions are. And our heart is what really exudes our vibrational signature. And so, but the only way to hear what someone's heart is emitting vibrationally is deep. And so I'm going to introduce you all to the concepts of that, some of the concepts that will be important for those of you that incorporate this into your health maintenance. And I'll touch on that a little bit more as we go. But this is something that can help to activate your resonant chamber in your body. So each of us, we've got our own personalized, unique resonant signature that our body creates. And that, plus our intentions of what we speak, what we emote from our bodies, that's a large part of the vibration that I feel from you. And so I know everybody has experienced somebody walking in a room, and pretty much everybody in the room feels the vibration of this person and turns around, and they didn't even say anything. They just walked in the room. And so by utilizing our resonant chamber, we increase the projection of our vibrational signature as we move about through life. And so in order to connect our minds to our VIP, entrainment is necessary, because our representative is constantly consumed with the matter of the moment. And so in order for us to allow ourselves to be able to connect to our deepest spiritual selves, as well as to be able to connect and hear and feel the heart vibration of everyone around us, as opposed to just those who are on the same channel, as Niambi described. And I refer to that as being in a vibrational realm. And so, I just mentioned the matter. I'm sure we've all heard the term or the question, well, what's the matter? Well, the matter, consciousness comes before matter. And so we create the matter through our consciousness. And so the representative, of course, is focused on the worldly matter, that the representative can only see what's happening in the world, what's in front of me, whereas the VIP can connect to all the possibilities. And that's why people pray. That's why people meditate. That's why people chant. And those are techniques that have been utilized throughout time to get into a state of being where I can receive answers and I can hear other perspectives. And when it comes to healing race, that broadening our vibrational realm and hearing other perspectives that's key. And then, of course, the law of oneness. And so let's see here. I want to actually share something else here with you before I actually introduce you to a couple of exercises that I want you to take away from this. So we all have, and so I'm going to talk just a little science, not nothing heavy, but we know enough science, and we have instruments and so on to measure brain activity and so forth and so forth. And to the best of our knowledge so far, it appears that about 70%, maybe even more, of our brain activity is actually in our subconscious. So that means the 30% that I'm conscious of, some of those stories, I'm like, okay, I don't want to hear that no more. I don't want to deal with it no more. And so I shove it out of my consciousness, but it keeps coming back periodically because it's still in my subconscious. And what's crazy is every iteration. So like, this fall, the story goes like this. It's the same topic, based on the same memory. And then, 2 years later, the story is morphed into, something slightly different. So it's crazy, but we have these stories that we make up off of real events. And then we have stories that we picked up from the channel that we're on. And so 70% of our brain's activity is things that we aren't conscious of. But that's the kind of things that are running around in our brains. And so, like unconscious bias. And so in order to be able to remove and make room to replace these unnecessary, possibly not even true stories, they become soup by now. Some of them are so thick, full of different pieces of memories that they're stew even, And so how do I relieve myself of that? And so in order for us to grow, we must be able to hear and feel. And in order to hear and feel, I have to clear out the old things that I heard and felt and saw and so on. So that's another area for entrainment, to help to clear out our brains and also to open us up so that we are no longer tone deaf. So our main vibe, like I said, our main vibration comes from our hearts. And so if I'm tone deaf, how can I hear, if I'm a white person, how can I hear this Black Lives Matter advocate? If I'm Antifa, how can I hear this KKK members, what's resonating with them? And so we have to be able to open up our hearts and be able to get into, broaden our vibrational realm so that I can hear and feel what the other person, who up till now I've shut off, and sometimes for good reason on the surface, because it appears that if I shut them off, I'm going to keep myself safe. And so if I'm the person, if I'm the barrier, then from being able to be more open, then again, I have to be able to remove my worldly self from the equation, so that I can actually hear more deeply on a spiritual level. And again, that's the entrainment. There's many methods. There's meditation, prayer, chanting. People do. I'm sure there are forms of entrainment that I'm not even aware of, but So I'm going to share with you some entrainment through sound bath. And I believe I've still got about 25 minutes. So I may have just a little more information to share with you first. And are there any questions so far? Go ahead. Go ahead, Cal.
So I just had to look up entrainment because I've never heard that term before.
Yes.
And so I looked it up on the Webster's dictionary or whatever.
Okay.
But could you give me your explanation?
Well, entrainment is when you synchronize, when two rhythms become synchronized, or when you have two vibrations that become one either dominates the other and entrains it into being the same, or at the very least dominates it and entrains it into being now a harmonic of the dominant note. And so entrainment, some of you may have heard of binaural beats, and binaural beats, they're the epitome of the concept of entrainment. That's how that's the origin of that word in a I guess a neurological use. Binaural beats are used to entrain people into sleep, to rid people of pain, et cetera, et cetera. So did I answer your question? All right, great. Any other questions on entrainment or resonance?
This is me chiming
Yes.
in. Is it sort of like the metronome where, you've got two things, and so it's kind of creating where one is leading,
Actually,
like a dance?
Thank you. I'll bring up that video and share my screen. What Niambi is referring to is there's a known concept. If you've got mechanical clocks, let's say you've got 4 or 5 mechanical clocks in a room, and I stress mechanical, and they have to be, and they start off where they are not in sync. And over time, they become all synchronized. So I'm going to see if here we go. Metronome synchronization. Yeah. All right. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, I can't share. You have to allow me to share, Niambi. There we go.
As he's getting that together, it's sort of like when women are together that are at a age of menstruating, they start menstruating together. Their bodies kind of entrain together. Yeah, that's kind of like that.
So can you all see the video? All right. I've timed it. It's like 60 seconds, or just before 60 seconds when they're all synchronized. almost there. Getting there. Yeah. So this is how things work in our world, even with people in the workplace. You know, you have a dominant energy within a group, but I'll save. I don't want to go too far, but basically that deals with a concept that I would love to offer you guys training in, but it's a concept of tension-free rhythmic entrainment, or in this case, entanglement. And so in our daily lives, we entangle with many different people, and we have a rhythm that we engage with, and it doesn't look like a dance, but it looks like I do this, you do that, you do this, I do that, and so it becomes this rhythmic thing that happens in relationships. And so how do we recognize when we have tension-free rhythmic entanglement? And you know, there's a certain point where we don't want to be like metronomes where we're all just doing the same thing, but being aware of that concept of rhythmic entanglement, that's something that's very important in group atmospheres. But so that was thank you, Niambi, for reminding me of that, because that's what entrainment looks like in the physical world. And so that's what happens within our bodies also. So what I'm going to hopefully do over the next, how long do I have, Niambi?
If you need a few more minutes, I think people will, if we can get a nod that we won't start the next one until 3. So give us at least 5 minutes so we can have a potty break. Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, I was thinking, 10, 15 minute, well, actually, it actually takes 22 minutes to entrain the human body, and that's rhythmically. Now, as far as our brains, unfortunately, I hate to say our brains are a little more easy. It takes anywhere from 6 seconds to 60, 6 to 60 seconds to entrain the brain. And that's why binaural beats are so effective. And so I know.
So can we meet in the middle and maybe do 10 minutes, and then that would allow people to have, if they have questions,
a break. Yeah.
And then a break.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm just going to introduce just a couple more concepts here of harmonics and intervals. And the reason this is important in introducing you to the concepts of being able to use sound as a carrier, because that's basically what I'm about to introduce you to, is how to use sound as a carrier for our visions and our desires, as well as using sound and vibration to bring in information and to help ourselves to be more receptive. And last but not least, introduce you to how to shift your own energy through sound. And so that's what I'm going to do right now. I have some tuning forks here, and these are actually ancient tuning. They're tuned to ancient Egyptian tuning. So there's still C, D, E, F, G, blah, 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 but they're using a frequency from ancient times. But what's important here is that we've got the intervals of sound, and our bodies are made of 70% water. So when sound creates a vibration, it affects our bodies, and it also affects our emotions. And so just to demonstrate that, I want you to listen to these tuning forks, and I want you to tell me how each how it makes you feel. So I'm going to do the first one, and then I'll ask you. So anybody who had a thought or got a feeling, so one more time. Did anybody feel anything?
It sounds like something from childhood.
Okay. All right.
It was really alerting.
Okay. So do.
Right, can you turn it up a little bit or bring it a little closer? So
Oh, okay.
it's not as
Let's
loud
see.
as it needs to be.
So now that's a different one. So I'll do that one more time. If I don't kill myself with my tuning fork. All right. So here we go. So how did that one feel?
The last one, the sound stayed with us longer. For me, it stayed with me longer.
Okay, so it resonated with you more.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
So.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I'm not sure. Hi, Rob. This is Alice.
Yes.
Hi.
Uh-huh. Hi, Alice.
Hi. Long time no see.
Yeah.
And I don't know what this means, but I just felt it on the right side of my body, like the best way is like a breath of air going in the right side, not my left. So
okay,
I'm split.
Yeah. Well, they're basically just the two intervals using 3 tuning forks, and one just ends on a note that's different. And so it invokes a different resonance with different people. And so that's all I really wanted to illustrate, is that we can change our moods, we can change our thoughts just by introducing certain tones and tonal patterns into our day. And so I can go from, let me get this one out. So I can go from so ding ding ding, or I can, more evening cup of wine type of feeling. The more mellow, whereas the first one was more, I'm here. So that's how people show up in our lives. That's how we show up in other people's lives. So if I'm vibrating that first chord, then I show up and maybe I'm the one that walks in the room and everybody just notices, even though I didn't say anything. Whereas if I show up with the other vibe, that's not a bad vibe, but it's just more mellow. It's more incognito, like, yeah, I'm here, but I'm just chilling, So that's the power of vibration. And so the next thing I want to do is conduct a sound bath and shower you with lots of vibration, so that and I since we're not in person, I can't really gauge everybody's intention of what they want to get out of this. But I strongly suggest that you wear headphones and you prepare to close your eyes. And if I instruct you to vocalize any sounds during the sound bath, feel free to do that, muted or unmuted. Probably muted would be better, because then people can focus on the sound bath itself. But expelling air and energy, those are good things, and they're welcome. As a matter of fact, one thing that I do to prepare for meetings sometimes, especially if my mind is racing, is and you can do this with me right now after I show you what I'm talking about. And the purpose is to get all the BS out. And so that combined with intention, now I go into the meeting and my words and clear, because I've gotten a lot of the babble out. And it also is good just to do that prior to relaxing, because now maybe there will be fewer things for me to fight running around in my brain, so that I can relax. And so, all right, so I am going to take the headset off, and the next thing you'll hear is sound. Feel free to release. And so it is. And so it is. And I thank you again for sharing this time. I'm very, very thankful. And enjoy the rest of the seminar with my wife, my lovely wife, Niambi. And it's good to see the faces that I know and those that I'm seeing for the first time. Thank you for taking the time. And I hope it is open your mind and broaden your vibrational realm so that we can all move to the next step. Thank you.
And before you leave, Rod, thank you again for that. Will you be joining us on Wednesday and Thursday so that if people want to talk to you more or talk about their experience a little bit deeper?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I'm definitely open.
So I got a witness, y'all.
All right.
He said he was coming.
Okay.
All right.
You all have a blessed day.
Thank you so much.
All right.
All right. Hopefully this was helpful. I'm going to stop recording right now. There we go. Sorry about that. So I'm going to repeat that so that you have that. That's why it's good to have a techie in the house. That, you know, now that we are entrained and we are at a vibrational level, but I know that we can't solve anything regarding humanity in a state of fear, shame, rage, denial. You can't. The only way that you can solve it is from a space of love. You know, that's just like when you're a parent. You know you do not discipline your children when you are mad at them because you will kill them. But you wait till you're in a controlled state of love before you even broach, even in any relationship. If you love that person and they upset you, you're not gonna do it in your representative self, because what happens when you're in your representative self, which is your unconscious state, that if somebody, that's what road rage, when you see somebody that's in road rage, those are unconscious states. I've never understood road rage personally. Why would I get upset if you're trying to pass me? I don't know. You just got somewhere to go that's more important than where I got to go. But it becomes this competition that how dare you, go faster than me, or how, so those are just representatives that are creating a story of competition. And through that story, then they're competing with one another. And our internal representative is like our attorney, like an attorney. When you hire a good attorney, that attorney the whole job of the attorney is to win the case. They don't really care if you're guilty or not. You can be dead wrong. If you got a good enough attorney, you can get off. They can beat your case. And so that's what we all have an internal attorney that doesn't want us to be wrong, that doesn't want us to feel like we're being taken advantage of. So it keeps us from being vulnerable and accessible, because our representative is out front, not trusting anybody, wanting to know what their agenda is. And usually the people who trust the least, it's either, again, a reflection or a projection. So what is it that I'm not trusting that is making me not trust or not trust other people? So it all comes back to me. But most of us, 99% of the people that are walking around in this culture and around the planet, are not conscious. They're not being their true self. They're either walking as their wounded self, or their angry self, or their vengeful self, which is a representative. And so I want to share this video with you. And I'm sure some of you may have seen it, some not. So it was produced in this year, but it's about the invention of color and in America. And I'm sure you've seen these videos, or you may have avoided videos like this because they can evoke some painful memories, or that cellular memory, that ancestral memories. But this time I want you to watch it from a different perspective. I want you to tune into this video from your vibrationally intelligent perspective, from that part of you that is connected to divine source. And I want you that as you're watching this video to think about it from not what's encoded in the collective, but rather looking at it from the perspective of what kind of heart damage has this experience done to us collectively on both sides, all sides of this. What is the damage? When you see somebody, typically we say, why'd you do that? What's wrong? What's wrong with you? And I want you to shift that to maybe having an understanding of or a question, a curiosity of what has happened to this part of me, because everything is us. What has happened to this part of me that has created this kind of trauma and drama for themselves and everybody else? Because you can't hurt nobody without hurting yourself, because I am you. So when I try to hurt you, I'm really hurting myself as well. It's like we have this concept that if we, I'm going to hold on to rage and somehow you're going to get sick. It doesn't work like that. If I'm holding poison trying to make you sick, I'm going to get sick. And so I love this African proverb that says, don't let what somebody else eat make you sick. Don't let what somebody else is going through. It's just like when you go to the doctor and you're in the emergency room and you walk in the emergency room, you got something going on and you're walking in the emergency room and there's all of these sick people. Now you don't want a doctor that's going to come in and start crying, because they can't handle all of the pain that's going on in the room. You want somebody who has removed themselves enough from the actual experience, but still has an open heart and empathy. I've been in an emergency room situation where they put you in the little curtained room. And the worst part of it for me is when I hear a child come in who has a broken bone or something. And it's this guttural wail, this primal sound that comes from somebody, particularly children, but I've heard adults do it too, and that's even worse. When you hear someone have this deep guttural, primal sound of pain that it's just heart-wrenching, and it makes you want to cry. When we watch movies that somebody is really going through something, we connect to it and it makes us cry. My husband used to say, that's a video, right? They acted, right? But it's still, the emotion is so real because I've connected in so deeply. So I don't want a doctor to come in that is crying with the child, or the doctor starts wailing because they can't solve that when you're in a state of pain. That doctor has to come in a state of love, that I know that you're hurting. And I know you're hurting because your arm is broke. But guess what? We're going to have to re-break that arm in order to set it right. So I'm going to have to walk through, even though you're crying, even though you are in pain. My heart is open. Now, I don't want to be so disconnected that I can't even feel, and I'm just disconnected from your pain. But the key is my heart is open, because if my heart isn't open, intellectually, I know that, okay, in order for me to set this right, it doesn't matter what you're going through. I'm going to set this right. And that's the representative. But if I'm in my vibrationally intelligent perspective, my heart is open. So I'm considering your pain. Your empathy is your pain in my heart. So I understand that. And so I'm going to be gentle with you. I'm going to be compassionate with you, but I'm going to have to help you to set this right. So I want to help you to not be so upset about it, because I'm going to help you to see it a different way. And so it's the same thing that we have to do with this conversation around race. We have to get a different perspective first, because you can't solve nothing if you in pain. You can't help nobody. So that's why the first response, we are the first responders, in that we have to fix self first. Make sure that we're in alignment first before you try to get somebody else in alignment. Because if you don't, it's either a reflection or a projection. It's not truth. And all human communication is one of two things. It's either a cry for help or a loving response. Anytime you interact with somebody, it is either a cry for help or a loving response. And then it goes on the flip side. If something happens to you or somebody comes to you, you can either respond as a cry for help or a loving response. And usually that will happen based on who is front and center, who's driving your vehicle, who is in the front seat. Is it your representative, or is it your vibrationally intelligent perspective? Because nobody can make you feel anything. It's a choice. Love is a choice. It's this magical thing that you can't get it and you can't take it. You can only receive it and give it, because you have to be in that vibrational realm. So I'm going to show this video. It's about 8 minutes, and stick with it, because it has some really vital information to help us on a historical perspective of how we can shift this narrative, or just at least understanding the story, because a lot of times we're trying to solve stuff, but we don't have the full story. And so if we get the perspective of the story, and so I want you to take yourself out of your Black collective consciousness or your white collective consciousness and sit with this from a different perspective as a vibrationally intelligent being. Okay? So shift out of the mind and into the heart space, and let's see what this is really about. All right? Everybody with me? All right, I'm gonna try this share the screen thing, and I love how y'all are telling me on the side, chatting, and I apologize that when Rod was doing his, full disclosure here, while Rod was doing his toning, I had to go to a pee break. And then I see all of these messages saying, tell him to stop sharing the screen while the thing was going on. And so I'm like, oh God, look, I'm glad I came back. And I'm sorry that I had it on like that. And so I'm gonna share this with you, and I'm gonna look at the chat. So if anything is not showing up right, you all let me know. All right, so let me do this. I'm gonna share my screen. And all right, can you all see my screen? It's a big yellow. Okay, it's there. And Cal, if you can give me a thumbs up if you can hear the sound, just real quickly. No sound, hold on.
Hey, you, Caucasian. Hey, man. Hey, Blanco. Gringo. Paleface. I gotta tell you a secret. This might come as a surprise, but white people, listen to this. In America in the early 1600s, you didn't exist. You didn't exist? I hate to break it to you like this. Listen to what your history books missed. What would be made white were completely unrelated, under-melanated people. Frankenstein, collage by an optical illusion. The ultimate mirage called race. A social construction like Santa Claus. Back in the day, y'all either English or Scot, Irish Catholic or Protestant, land owning or not. But you can't have white without black in America. Back before we was Captain America, black wasn't a race. Africans came from different nations, like in Dongo, where Queen Nzinga reigned. Indigenous were the same. Powhatan, Doeg, regardless of tribe, melanin didn't determine fate. Skin color didn't make a difference, no matter what hue your flesh was tinted in. Cause your complexion wasn't kinship, and pigment was insignificant. It didn't prevent you from certain privileges. This is the story of how skin became color, color became race, and race became power. The creation of the Caucasian, white Aryan. It's the story of how white became American. The census says your race is white, don't believe the hype. 1650, Jamestown. Meet William Berkeley, appointed by King Charles II of England to govern colonial Virginia. He rules with an iron hand and enriches a small cadre of English landowners. They grow tobacco. The sweet leaf is gold, America's first road to riches. Yeah. To grow the crop, they kidnap and capture men, engaged in human trafficking and trap the African. And if they can't steal the labor, then they use lies as lures of false promises as tools to recruit all the poor from Bristol to Liverpool. Little did they know that they were in for something cruel. Jamestown was their destination. When Berkeley looks at his servants, what does he see? Color, of course, but color doesn't mean much to a man of means.
They're heathens, waste, dirty, diseased, lazy animals. I would sooner call my hound brother than a servant of any shade.
Under God and by law, he has the right to whip, maim, starve, buy, or sell them at his pleasure. But he fears them. He should. The rich are few, and the poor are many. It's almost impossible to imagine now, but the poor see themselves as one. They have a common bond and a common enemy. Together. 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 The Africans and English worked together. They labored and lived, prayed, and made a life together. Stole, escaped, hold, and wait together. They got lashed and went to jail together. Worked hard and catch hell together. It wasn't criminal for them to love together. Got married and had kids together. The colony was filled with different shades together. Mahogany, tan, olive, and beige together. Molasses, dark, chocolatey flavors together. Peach, bronze, amber, and brown. But very soon life would change up in Jamestown. There's no lifetime slavery yet. The indentured Europeans and Africans can still buy their freedom. Released from bondage, they'd set out in search of land. For these new frontiersmen, freedom is a rotten promise. The rich own all the good soil, and the indigenous tribes desperately grasp for the rest, fighting for every acre they have left. The frontiersmen seethe with each new tax, each broken promise, each death, each rich man that grows richer, each poor man that grows poor, until they can't take it anymore. 1676, time to take matters into their own hands. They cast one Nathaniel Bacon as leader, the son of an aristocrat who came to the frontier after squandering his inheritance. Under Bacon, they band together to take land from the tribes and power from Berkeley. Together. Get your guns, get your knives. First target is the tribes. Kill the men, women, and the children. And the children. 100 men, turned into 1,000. A posse turned guerrilla army is astounding. And Dongo, English, Angolan, Irish fought together to abolish all the tyrants and the snakes, ready to melt the heads on stakes. Enough of these rich men, of these false men, corrupt men, light the torches and set Jamestown ablaze. Let it burn, let it burn, let it burn, let it burn. Jamestown put the ashes in an urn. 100 years before the revolution, Africans and Europeans were in union. Let it burn, let it burn, let it burn, let it burn. The British never wanted us to earn. So bring the fire to the upper classes. We can make a better future from the ashes. Berkeley watches Jamestown burn, and he burns with vengeance.
The waste must be cleansed from God's green earth.
Behind a British gunship, retribution. Berkeley hangs 20 and scatters the rest into the wilderness. The rich of Jamestown know it could have been their own necks hanging from the end of a poor man's noose. To survive as rich men, as powerful men, they vow never to let the poor rise up again as one. How? What scheme? What deception? In 1681, white will appear in a legal document for the first time in history when Virginia bans Africans from marrying whites. One law of dozens creating and separating the races. Blacks across the colonies will be enslaved for life, no longer treated as human, but as property. Poor whites were handed the whip. The rich exploited their ignorance. They traded rebellious plots for managing slave auction blocks, and any chance for both of their freedom was lost. It doesn't happen overnight, but the rich divided people by phenotype. Melanin, skin color, you dark, you light. Your life or death could be determined by the question, are you white? Well, are you white? Go ahead. Take a look in the mirror. Ask yourself, am I white?
All right. Take a breath. So I showed that, and it's on YouTube. It's called The Invention of White People. Something to think about in that, again, when I talked about in the first hour about collective consciousness, white was created as a black was created, and it created a vibration that has gone on for 400 to 600 years. And in that vibration is all of that trauma that has been collected on both sides, because you cannot watch tragedy without it also affecting your own DNA. That's just like when I gave the example of my parents arguing, that it's still, even though they weren't arguing at me and fighting with me, I still, got that in me by witnessing it. It became part of me. So a lot of the trauma, we have looked at it from a black issue that, yes, we, from an oppressor, we're being oppressed, but what about the souls of those that are oppressing? And what does that do to the DNA? The molecular structure of witnessing acts of violence and being in a space where you're in a consciousness that makes this okay, or in a consciousness that has had so much trauma that you can't even see your way out of it. And it just, so that's why I said you can't solve anything in a space of pain. You have to be in a space of love, because there's trauma all around. And that's why I sent out, and it was last minute because it just occurred to me last night to send you the story of Akna and her children, a story that came through me when I was writing the book, because it gives us a different perspective that I'm trying to have Mama Akna energy, and that, you know, I want to be in an energy that I can have compassion for all sides, because hurt people hurt people. And when I look at those that created this illusion of, which was all about power, what happened on a soul level, that, you know, what kind of darkness came into them that they would create this kind of system. And so, again, don't let what somebody else eat make you sick, in the sense that they ate that poison. And so now we have a choice to decide whether we want to continue to consume it or live in a different reality and create a different way of being. But all of our lives are, because we are born into this collective consciousness, it's marinating in all kinds of biases. You know, I do diversity, equity, and training and inclusion work. And most of the work, when people do that work, the first thing they talk about is implicit bias. And that is just like one little like grain of sand when we talk about bias, you know, as a, you know, from a psychological level, psychologists have determined that there are over 175, almost 200 different biases that control our human mind. That your representative self is literally controlled by over 200, almost 200 different biases. That nothing that you do is outside of the consciousness of whatever biases are set. And that's a whole, I mean, we could do a whole session just on unconscious bias and all of the different ways that it shows up. It's not just implicit. And so, but I could, like I said, I can speak on that at a different time. But just being aware that we have so many different things that keep us distracted and keep us in the same narrative, that if we would raise our consciousness to a different level and know that if somebody is in pain, the piece that I think is important in all of this is that when we look at something like this, it's very easy to say other. But in our real life, in our heart space life, we have relationships with all kinds of people from different backgrounds, hopefully. Love is love. We say that love is love, but yet there's the representative part of us says, I hate white people, or I hate Black people. I can't trust Black people. And it goes into the stereotypical narratives. But then there's a part of us when we're in our vibrationally intelligent perspective that we watch a movie and we can see love as love, no matter who the characters are. When we see babies, hopefully we see nothing but love. It's like we love babies, but we hate humans. We hate, as they grow up, we hate people, but we love babies, but we hate people. So it is in that consciousness of making sure that you stay in your vibrationally intelligent perspective, making sure that you are responding and not reacting to everything. The next hour, I want to share with you things that, you know, how do we heal this? What are some practical applications of this that we can do? How do you live in that space? Now, I will be transparent. I don't get it right all the time, but every time something shows up for me, if I spot it, I probably got it. If it's something that that's really got me prickled, then I have to check in and see, okay, where's that landing? You know, because really we get really upset when there are things that affect us. You know, when we are affected by something, we're moved to action. We're more moved to action by something that affects us rather than something that offends us. We can be offended all day long, but as long as it doesn't affect us. When it affects us, you know, I'm good with, some people, it's not me, will say, I'm good with gun control, but just don't come try to take my gun. You know, don't come try to control me. Most people are wearing masks, but it's just like, don't try to take my, liberties away. So it doesn't, until it affects us, we're not really moved to action. And that's the incongruence. Because when we don't see ourselves in everything, we become complicit in everything. You know, when the tsunamis happened, it's almost been 15, 20 years ago now when that major tsunami happened. And I remember the thought came to me that, wow, as I'm watching this, I'm watching it kind of in a removed way. And I was aware of my removal, in that I was looking at those people and I felt empathy and sadness, but it was those people because I didn't know anybody that was over there. When Katrina happened, I was watching the news very differently because I'm looking, because that's connected to me. I know people that are in Louisiana. I know people that could have been, that lost their families and their lives. So I'm watching the news differently. I'm getting involved differently because I'm connected to it. So when you're not connected to a situation, when you have removed yourself, that's when, there is no action. It becomes this complicitness. So I want to ask you, who is your other? Who have you othered? Who is not in your circle of trust? Who is not in your family? Because when we talk about family, I come from a family of 7, it's 7 of us, and we don't all get along at the same time, in the same way. We are 7 different expressions of our parents' DNA and our ancestral DNA. But I can talk about my siblings. I can talk about them. I know all their faults. I know who they are. I've known them for all their lives. But don't you talk about my siblings. I will hurt you if you talk about my siblings, because that's my family. I know my son is lazy, but you don't have to call him lazy. That's my child, because I have a connection to him. I have a connection to them. And it's when we are not connected, that's when we can allow all kinds of manner of everything to happen. It's because we don't feel the connection. We don't feel, you are not part of my group. You're not part of my family. You're not part of who I am. So thus I can treat you as other. That was in that video. That's how he was able to separate. The poor were all together, black, white, all of the cultures were together. And then they got separated by economics, or the promise of economics, which then about skin color. That's what the real separation was. And we have been living through this group of powerful, rich people at the time, their framework for the last 600 years. I think it's time to change the narrative. I think it's time for us to rework that contract. And we can do it because it was false. It was made up. It wasn't even real. But that's the power of the collective consciousness. And what I get excited about is that if they could pour that stuff in, we could pour in some other stuff. They have muddied the waters, just like we are in right now trying to clean up the environmental footprint that has happened in our oceans and all of these landmines. Well, I believe we can do it if we change our, one, focus on it. But just like the water, the way to clean up the water is, one, remove the trash, which is what that sound entrainment does, it helps to clear the mind, so that's like moving some of that garbage out of the way. But what do you do when you still got muddy water? The water is still dirty. So if I had in that cup, if I had a cup of, again, my analogy with the ocean water, if I have an ocean water full of a cup full of ocean water, and it is muddy and dirty and, it's got a whole lot of debris in it, rather than pouring it completely out, what I would do is I would keep pouring in clean water. I'd keep pouring in clean water. And the more clean water I pour in, the cleaner the water that's in the cup. So we have to continue to pour in clean vibration, pour in those things that elevate our vibration so that we don't get dirty. And because when we get mentally dirty and we're walking around the world letting our representative, who is all muddied up, run the show, then that creates more chaos. But if I am in my vibrationally intelligent perspective, I know that the way to clean that, the way to heal my heart on a molecular, on a cellular generational perspective is to pour more good in, allow my heart to be healed, allow myself to go through those internal healings so that then I can have compassion on every human being. Every human being is doing the best they can with the information that they have. Everybody that does any kind of act has justified it in some way. Justified it, because nobody does anything that they think is not justified. You talk to somebody who just killed their whole family. I was justified in doing that. Because they deserved it. So every behavior, and then you get a good attorney who will, help, collaborate that. So it's about being right, or is it about being at peace and in alignment? Because we can justify any behavior. The piece that keeps us disconnected is that we have somehow, this is again, we're in the upside down world, but we've created where forgiveness, we think it's a lower vibration. We think that if I forgive you, that I'm a punk. Somehow you're going to take advantage of me. I like it when people are strong and assertive and sure of themselves. But basically, that's not what really heals. A lot of people, I've heard young people say this, young Black people say this. They'll say, if I was a slave back in there, there's no way I would have took any of that. I would have, no, you wouldn't have. You would have fallen into the vibration, the collective consciousness at that time, and you would have done what everybody else did. White people have said, I would never have been a slave owner. Well, yeah, you would have, if that, under the right circumstances. If you were poor and you didn't have any other circumstance, you would have fallen into that collective consciousness unless you were in your vibrationally intelligent perspective. And there were some that were. That's why we had abolitionists. That's why we had people who rose above, who went against the norm, because they removed themselves out of that consciousness to do something different. And so what I'm challenging and offering to you is that it's not going to, what is normal will be what everybody else does. This is not going to feel familiar. You have not set up, your default setting. You got to shift the default setting. So it's going to feel strange. It's going to sometimes feel like this, I don't know, this don't feel right. Well, it shouldn't feel right because it's new. It's a different vibration. It's a different way of being. So it's not going to feel new until you do it enough. There is benefit. The reason we stay in the collective consciousness because there's benefits. It's just like being at a company. You stay at your job because of the benefits. There are benefits to being in a group, in a group mentality. If I act this certain way, they're gonna give me a paycheck at the end of the week, and I get my health benefits. I get my 401k, I get all of these different benefits from acting a certain way and being in a certain consciousness in this company mentality. Now it's a whole different vibration when you're working for yourself. When you're an entrepreneur, you're going to walk in the world a whole lot differently because you're not in the group, you're not dependent on the group. So that's why it's hard sometimes to pull away, and my people don't want to be ostracized. You know, my family might not like what I'm saying. And the challenge we have is that we don't have to always walk around trying to proselytize to everybody, trying to convert everybody to the way of thinking. That doesn't, nobody changes anything under duress. Nobody. The only way to change anyone is to inspire them. And that's what that saying of Gandhi's saying to be the change you want to see in the world is that show me what you mean. Shine your light so bright, you know, that you are so full of pure water that it make everybody thirsty. Everybody wants some of that. I want to be like that. I want some of that light because that feels good. That feels good. And so they'll have to adjust to your light. They'll put on shades and be shady. Let them put on shade. Let them throw shade at you. But that shouldn't affect how you move in the world. Because if you're in a neighborhood that is completely dark and you may be the only light that neighborhood has, if you're the only light in that neighborhood, you're a valuable commodity. So you don't judge anybody that they got their electricity turned off. That's not your problem. That's not your business. They just without light. And so you can have compassion because I've been in a situation where maybe my bills didn't run right or my flow didn't run right and my electricity, but I can have compassion on that and not judgment. And so with my light, I just shine a little bit brighter so that my neighbor can have some light until they can get their light on. Because everybody's got this internal pilot light. And so it's just like when you have a gas stove. The way to start a gas stove is you've got to strike it with some fire source. And then until that, you know, sometimes you'll hear that click, 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 until it gets going. And so many people are in that click, click, click state. They can't get their fire going. They're stuck. But you can't help them unless you've got fire yourself. Unless you are ignited. Unless you've got something that to give. So we try to help other people when we don't have electricity ourselves. And everybody in the dark. So that's the way out of this, is to light up yourself so that you can inspire others. You become safe. When people can see who you are, you know, it's like going in the dark. I'm scared of the shadows in the dark. I don't know who you are. All I see is a white person. All I see is a black person. But then as your light comes out, oh, I know who you are. Thank you. There's less fear because there's just love. I see you. You see me. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. Man, we're running out of time. Oh my God, it's time for a break. And I'm gonna stop recording. And appears to be our last segment together today. And I want to, there's another video that I want to show because now we're in this, this segment of it where, okay, now what? You've given us all this stuff. Now what, lady? What are we supposed to do with all this stuff? How are we supposed to live in the real world now that we come out of this Zoom utopia, so to speak? And back in crazy land where there's an apocalypse going on and we got to wear masks and we got to be socially distanced and, you know, all of these other things that are happening in the world. I wish I had a magic pill that would say, you know, okay, let's, you know, now the world is going to be wonderful. It's not. It's going to require us to do some work. It is going to, I wish I could say that this is going to be an easy thing. We are talking about 600 years of imprinted information that we are trying to unravel and undo and record and recalibrate. It's just like when you have a computer, how do you recalibrate it? How do you fix a computer that's broken? You know, you can fix the memory, you can, you know, delete files, you can do all kinds of things to help restructure that. And we can spend a lot of time talking about cognitively what to do. And a lot of people have spent energy writing books, me included. But there are a lot of information. There's no loss of information. There are lots of good books out there if you want to deep dive into the cognitive solutions. I find that there, you know, what it does is it's like spinning in that same orb, because we don't seem to get to any other solution from it. And so that's why I've tried to take you on a different path, which is a path, rather than going through the representative mind, let's start at the vibrationally intelligent perspective. Let's start at the heart place. Let's start at from ground zero, where we are all connected, where we are all family, where we all understand that we are family. Because when we realize that we are connected, then we look at a problem very differently. I mean, think about it in your own family, that, you know, some relatives you may not get along with, but what do you chalk that up to? That's just my crazy uncle, you know, gotta love him. You know, there are some people that are, and this is in a healthy family. So we're not talking about a whole bunch of dysfunction, because there's some people you just want to disown, and you can't disown them, but you just make sure that you have enough distance and you've created boundaries. Basically, that person is showing up not for you to disconnect to them, but to actually show you where you need to have boundaries. You know, because again, everything that shows up for us is either a reflection or a projection. It just is. It's a mirrored image of something that if I'm experiencing it, then that's somewhere in my consciousness that I need to heal it. Maybe there is dysfunction that's happening in my family, and it is some ancestral. So this is still happening, and it's coming up right now because I'm the one to heal it. I am the one to heal it because I'm the one that's consciously aware of it. So it's going to take bravery. It's going to take bravery for you to create. And it doesn't, again, mean that you have to have verbal conversations and confrontations with somebody if they have a belief system, if they're in the collective consciousness and they in real deep. They in real deep. You can't change that mentality. All you can do is entice them by your light. There's a lot of light over here. Don't you want to come out into this light source? But some people, they're like vampires. They love the dark. They love the dark. Ain't nothing you can do to make them come out of the dark. That's not your assignment. That's not your business. That's between them and their creator. So all you can do is love them where they are. Just love them where they are. I cannot, and have compassion, because what has happened to you to make you think that the dark is better than being in the light space? How many wounds? And I will send you energy. There's so many ways that, now that I've understood this, that I send out my energy, positive vibration, and on everything. I was praying for you all before you even showed up here. I've been sending you good vibes. I was, as you all can see when your email, I was thinking about y'all at 12 o'clock this morning, sending you out an email, trying to make sure, just letting each one and each email I sent out, I didn't do a mass email. I put some people say, how did you, did you do one of these programs? No, as long as the groups are small like this, I will send you a personal one. I'll put your name on it because I want to connect on a personal level. Eyeball to eyeball, soul to soul, rather than just you become a statistic, you become an other when I don't take time to connect and see how you're connected to me. You know, it's just like going to a family reunion and you only talk to the people in your immediate family. You don't get to know your cousins. Just because you don't know them doesn't mean that they're not related to you. But you don't take time to get to know and have a different experience with them. Because everybody shows up. We are all reflections of the same thing. We're all parts of the ocean. And so there are parts of the Atlantic, there's parts of the Gulf that we can learn different things because they're swimming in a different part of the ocean. So they're going to have different experiences. They're going to have different things that they can share. And a lot of times we just share our trauma with each other. And we create shared trauma, but we don't create, how can we envision something different? The reason it's hard for us to envision a different reality than what we've lived in, because we're vested in the collective consciousness. We can't see anything but the box that was created. How are we going to create a world that everybody gets along? That's just impossible. It's just going to be impossible. And so then we give up. And we don't even try. And we just go back into our collective corners. And we think that this is just too big. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm just out. I'm gonna just stay with my group. And I'm gonna just stay with my group where it's nice and easy and peaceful. But if one of us is chained, ain't none of us free. That's just how it works. Crazy travels. Y'all didn't know that? Crazy will get on the bus and come to your neighborhood. So we're all created. We're all connected. And if we understand that we're all connected, we can, in this little collective, you don't know how much light you can emit just from your choices. Each one of us can affect 100 people at least. And especially if you're on social media, you know at least 100 people who know 100 people, who know 100 people, who know 100 people. So by you shifting in your consciousness, you affect not only socially your group, but genetically, you are, I hope my internet stays stable. Genetically, you are shifting the DNA within everyone who also has your same genetic cellular, cells. It's just how it works. When I heal, let's say my family had high blood pressure in it, I am healing all of the cells that are in me and any little minute cells that are in any of my ancestor chain, but also in my family line. I'm healing that because I'm in the continuum. I'm part of the chain. I'm not sitting as an island. Sometimes I might feel like I'm an island, but I'm more of a peninsula. I'm really connected. All of the pieces are all connected. There's not anything that sits by itself, independent of each other. We just don't. And when we have that consciousness and understand that, then we'll move in the world differently. We'll treat people differently because we'll know that we are connected, because what you do affects me and what I do affects you, because we are family. So we'll start making decisions from a different perspective. Is this good for the collective? Is this the highest good? Am I creating a vibration that is good for everybody? Or am I creating something, am I back in that collective consciousness where I've now created this dissonance, this disconnection? Because when you think from a space of inclusion, it means that you're including the whole family. It means that you're considering everybody's needs, everybody's, what are their capabilities? What are they? And everybody, I've not met a human being yet that doesn't want love, acceptance, and respect. I haven't met one. Not one person on the planet. Everybody can resonate that they want love, acceptance, and respect. So if everybody wants that, how do we get to a space where everybody can feel like they have love, acceptance, and respect? And so I'm going to share with you something that I have used and I continue to use. It keeps me, it helps me to be recalibrated right, because it connects right with my vibrationally intelligent perspective. And I mentioned it in my book, and it's the Ho'oponopono. And it's a Hawaiian prayer that was shared. They're like, it's not like one of these culturally appropriated things, because they've gifted humanity with this piece, because they know that it has worked for them and it keeps them in a state of peace and harmony. And so they graciously have shared this as a gift to humanity on how do we get to a space of healing and forgiveness with one another. And there is a lot of different practitioners now. There's Dr. Hugh Lin was one of the, that brought this literally from Hawaii. And one of his more noted students is, I think, Dr. Joe Vitale. And he has taken it and he, does a whole practice, and he's got a whole curriculum built around the Ho'oponopono. But I want to share just a little segment of an interview, and I want you to treat Dr. Hugh Lin as if he was one of our guest speakers for this. And it's a little bit of, it's just 8-minute segment, but he really explains how the Ho'oponopono works. And then I'm gonna come back after him, and we can talk, and I'll talk about it a little bit to share even more information of how I use it in my everyday life and how you could use it in your everyday life as well. All right. So I'm going to try this screen share thing again. Let me pull up the video so there's no lag in time and space. And okay, there it is. And let me share my screen again. And the last video, y'all, it was okay, right? Everything? Because once I put the video up, for some reason, I can't see you until it's over. So I was hoping that everything went okay. So I didn't change any settings, so this should work as well. All right. So this is Dr. Hugh Lin, and he's being interviewed. And this is one part of, I think it's like a 9-part series. This is, again, something that's on YouTube. And I can give you all of these links. When I send over the video, I will also send links of these videos that I've used, so you don't have to go hunting around on YouTube to find them. So no worries, ease and flow, y'all, ease and flow. All right, so let me get him up and share. And this is Dr. Hugh Lin being interviewed.
Good afternoon. My name is Rita Montgomery, and we are sitting here in the inn at 213 17 Mile Drive in Pacific Grove, California. And I have the pleasure of having an interview with Dr. Hugh Lin. And present with me also is Rick Moss, Dr. Rick Moss, and Marvin Reno. We have some questions. I have some questions of Dr. Hugh Lin. Please tell me, how do I pronounce your first name? Is it Jaha-Echols? Is that right?
It's E-Ale-Akala.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm wanting to speak with you, especially about some of the ideas that you bring up in the book Zero Limits, written about you by Joe Vitale. And perhaps you could start out by explaining a little bit about this idea of 100% responsibility for oneself, and an entirely different idea of what the self is according to the system that you speak about.
Well, I think Shakespeare said it better than I. If you read Sonnet 146, Shakespeare says, "Poor soul." And so Shakespeare is saying the basic idea is that there are tragedies in our lives because we don't take a look at where the origin of the problem is, and it's always in self. So the tragedy being in life is that we're clueless and we repeat the same thing over and over and over again. And so when I work at Hawaii, for example, when I worked at Hawaii State Hospital, working with people killed, raped, and murdered people, I had to ask the question, what is going on in me that I am experiencing this? I'm experiencing a patient being violent. I'm experiencing staff going crazy, that sort of stuff. And so having to take 100% responsibility for that. What's going on in me that I'm creating this experience? And so I just do this cleaning, and the cleaning, the Ho'oponopono is about going into the self, and specifically into the subconscious, and where the data is. And since everything is run by information, so the information in my subconscious is dictating to me what I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing. It's like in Shakespeare's Tempest, where Miranda says, "Oh, woe is me to see what I see." So Miranda has this insight that she's only seeing with data. And so it is with me, and so it is with all of you. And so I just work on the data in me that I experience as, quotes, the other person. So if I see you as being crazy and goofy, it's only my experience of you. If I erase that, you can't be that way. Not possible. And so that's what I mean to be 100% responsible. Being 100% responsible is taking responsibility for what is going on in you that you experience of whatever.
Could I ask you to clarify just a little point? You said, what is it in me that is experiencing this?
Yeah.
Could you clarify what you mean by experiencing? Do you mean perception?
No, I don't even mean that. Perception is really a end product or consequence of data playing in the subconscious. So again, coming back to Miranda is saying, I only can see what I see because the data is seeing what I see. So Miranda is really speaking what Shakespeare said, the mind is just a stage, and the data runs around on the stage, and the data is really what is going on. And so if the data is such that I'm experiencing, I'm suffering, or I'm experiencing people being goofy, then I have to be responsible for that. What's going on in me, and it's simply data playing, and more specifically, memories replaying in the subconscious. And those can be erased. Mm-hmm. I think that is probably the most profound thing about this Ho'oponopono, is that you could erase data.
Could you give us an example of what it feels like or looks like for data to be erased, or is that not something that can be done in this kind of setting?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Could you give us an example of cleaning? I mean, how do we erase the data within our own minds? Well, is that something that could be discussed?
Of course. You can teach it. Trees can do it. Cars can do it. Anybody can do it. But the idea is the most fundamental question one needs to know is the question, who am I? And most people have no idea about who they are, and therefore are not allow the data in them to speak for them, as opposed to choosing to not have the data by erasing it. And so it's coming back to great sages like Jesus. Jesus said, love your enemies. And your only enemy is the memory replaying that you experience as a judgment, anger, resentment, hate, annoyance. And so the Ho'oponopono is about falling in love with the data and saying to the anger, I love it, saying to the memory that replays the anger, I love you, thank you for showing up, and giving you one more chance to free you. And so the Ho'oponopono is just simply saying, I love you, thank you.
When the data is erased, what is the self that remains? Is it a unique self that is God created? Is it individuated, or is it just pure self?
So let me come back at you. So I would ask you, who's talking? Who's asking the question?
Well, that would be the data, because the other part of me would know the answer to that.
Yeah, but I'm saying since the data is talking, you can erase the data. So I'm saying to people, no matter if you have questions, you'll never be able to get at what is going on because the data is running you. And the idea is to get to see, we historically have come from this notion that you can decode things. So the Greek come along and Greek said, well, let's examine, let's analyze. But the Ho'oponopono is not about examining or analyzing. Ho'oponopono is about letting go of the data. So when the data is erased, you are what Buddha called in the space of void, or what Shakespeare calls you're in the state of blank. And it is when you are in that state of emptiness, void, and blank, then this inspiration comes through. What quantum physics called the phantom force of nothing.
So it's a state of nothingness?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, it's a state of nothingness that you're describing?
You have to really be careful because one has to be as precise as possible.
No thought? No words?
No, not no thought, no data plane. So what does that mean to have no data free? That means you're free. You're absolutely free with no data place. And it's only at freedom, or I'll use another word, clarity. Clarity is defined as no data plane. No data meaning no memory replaying in the subconscious that one experiences. So let's say you get the mind back to zero. It's what Jesus called the stone or the foundation. And only on that foundation then can you build something. And then out of that foundation comes the inspiration. And so you are moved by perfect information as opposed to being using dead information. But most of the time we're dead. We without realizing we're stuck in old data and we're dead. And the Ho'oponopono is about releasing the death and the debt. So we basically have a mortgage on our souls, and we don't even know that. And we because we're not conscious of it or not even aware of it, we're stuck in it, and we're just going to suffer. And it doesn't have to be so. That you can erase the data back to zero, and then back at zero, out of nothing comes this phantom force of inspiration. New data, brand new.
Hopefully that, I didn't lose you on that. And basically what he's talking about, hopefully that was with clarity, that they have found a practice called the Ho'oponopono, and I'll put that up, of what that is so that you can see it. And it's basically, like he was saying, a way to cleanse yourself of the data, to get you out of, like, if you're in the collective consciousness, the story, the data, because the story is what is creating the pain. The story is the representative's way of continuing to move in the world. The representative is a self of you is attached to, like Rod said earlier, the matter. So it's always creating matter, something to be in, trying to create a story of some sort. So it will go into the collective consciousness to get that materials to make the story. Because sometimes you've probably met people who, or maybe even yourself, have talked about an experience so much till it wasn't even your experience, but it becomes real for you because you've talked about it so much and experienced through the collective consciousness. That's why when people, like in consciousness of white people, why there's a sense of somebody is put in the collective consciousness that when a white woman gets in an elevator, she should grab her purse because that's in the collective consciousness. So nothing has happened to that person who is clutching her purse. She might not have any trauma at all, but she's hooked on the data. She's hooked on the stories that are in the collective consciousness. So if she could clean herself of, okay, when this is happening, why am I clutching my purse? This person has not shown me any reason to be in disharmony. What is it in me that needs to cleanse so that I am not showing up, creating drama? And sometimes we can attract drama because we go looking for it. I'm gonna keep clutching my purse until somebody shows up that will actually want to take it. So I'm going to create this drama because it's my belief system that this is the way that the world works. And this is the way it should be. So if we could cleanse ourselves of that, and that's what I was saying earlier before I played this, is that one of the things my practice is and when I am conscious of it, when something shows up for me, then I go and I consciously do the whole Ho'oponopono, so that I can release the story that's within myself, so that I can show up clean. I can clean, that's a way for me to clean my water, so that then I am in vibrationally intelligent space, that then from that space, I can make a decision, not reacting, but it puts me it resets me back to a state of response rather than reaction. And so, and what he was saying, that the value of that is that it cleans you to the space where you have creativity. Anybody that's around me knows that I am Miss Creativity. If there is something that, if you want some new idea or some new thought, I am your girl, because I am always trying to be plugged into that source of creativity. But the other side of it, it doesn't come, it's not like without work, because I make sure that I'm cleaning my water, so that then I don't have any data or stories playing that then keeps me in a state of not perfect. Please don't put me on no pedestal thinking I'm perfect and I got it right, to the best of my ability. So when you raise your consciousness, you live to the clarity of that experience. You live to the clarity of that. I'm sure there are things that I know there are things that I could do better, but I'm living to the clarity of my consciousness right now. And then as I grow, then I can do it even better. But what that does, when I get back to 0 point, then it creates this space for creativity. Because when I go into the ocean mind, I got an abundance of opportunities and different possibilities that show up. It's like that movie, Monsters, Inc. Is anybody familiar with the DreamWorks Monsters, Inc.? It's a kid movie, but I love kid movies. I'd rather watch those than any horror flick any day. But on Monsters, Inc., what I thought was so cool about it was that they, there's a lot of different layers to that story. But what I loved was that each door represented a different experience. And you walk through one door and you get a different experience, and it led to a whole different reality. But then when you go to the factory, there was like a multitude of doors. There were endless doors, endless possibilities, endless things that could happen. And what happens in the collective consciousness, it becomes one right way or only one way of doing things. And we get kind of in that rote of, we think that somebody that colors their purple hair is like out of control. I remember the first corporate gig that I got, and then people were like, you got a corporate job and you have purple hair? What? Yeah, it's purple. Yeah, it's cool. But I came in because that's who I am. I'm not in your I'm not in the corporate piece that I have to, I'm not going to conform to get that. I'm an independent. So I'm outside of that collective consciousness. So it allows me to be creative. It allows me to be myself. It allows me to have different solutions to different things, that I can see a problem in a different way, because I've got the ocean mind to tap, as do you. I know I'm special, but so are you. So are you. We're all connected to the same source. If I can do it, trust and believe, you can do it. You have the same capability. It's a choice. It's a choice. And that's why I love being around other creative people, because then it's like kindling to a fire, and we get up and we can do all kinds of possibilities. Many of you are my creative partners on here that are, I get excited because I got kindling and I add it to the fire, and then they add some different kindling and things, and we come up with this amazing possibility that has never been thought of. Never been thought of, because you're outside of the collective thinking about it. And it's only those that are in the collective that are saying, you can't do that. That's not possible. Nobody's ever done that. How you gonna do that? Well, I'm gonna do it outside of the collective because there is abundance of possibilities. Everything is possible. And so that's how I live. That's how I try to stay out of that collective consciousness as much as I can and stay in the vibrationally intelligent perspective. But it takes work because my default setting, my cellular memory is in the collective consciousness. It's rooted in the trauma. It's rooted in the pain. It's rooted in all of that. So I have to when it shows up, I have to make a decision that I'm going to heal it because I get the benefit of the healing, as do my ancestors, as do my lineage that's coming after me. They get a clean slate. They get a slate that is cleaned. They get a consciousness that doesn't have that muck in it. So the Ho'oponopono, let me share that with you, and kind of a tweaked version of it because we've added a step to it. I had a good friend, and I speak of this in length in a conversation with a wonderful, wonderful friend, and I'm gonna speak his name, Bandorn Hitton. He is just an amazing scientist mind, and he's here in North Carolina, so I get to be in community with him. And in the book, I share an extensive conversation with him around the Ho'oponopono and how he uses it and how he uses it, how he's adding an extra step so that we can heal ancestral memories and such. But just for your, so you don't have to go out there and look. And once you see it, you can go like on YouTube, like I said earlier, Dr. Joe Vitale has, can you all see my screen? Hold on, let me see. I don't think I shared it. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get this right. All right, so we'll play from current slide. All right, there you go. Can you see it now? Awesome, awesome. So but it's not in presenter view. There we go. So the Ho'oponopono is basically, this is your vibrationally intelligent perspective part of you that's having a conversation with your representative self. Basically, that's what it is. So when that representative self brings up some data, you can say to it, I apologize. Because basically, stuff is coming up. I'm hurt, I'm wounded, I'm frustrated, I'm sad, I am enraged. And so your vibrationally intelligent self speaks to the representative part of you and says, I apologize. Please forgive me. I love you. I appreciate you. I respect you. I thank you. Now. Because that's what we need. Is most of the time when something comes up, when we are, that's why this whole conversation around racism, what Black folks are waiting for white people to apologize and just admit it. And white people like, that didn't happen to me. I didn't own no slaves. That ain't me. And so we're in this battle of consciousness when what we want is an acknowledgement, because in that acknowledgement, you are witness, you are acknowledging that I see you, I feel you, I hear you, I see you. And so that's validating our experience. It's like when you're in pain or you go through something, first thing you want to do is tell somebody about it. Girl, you ain't gonna believe what happened to me. Let me tell you what just happened. And usually we share the stories that are not good. Sometimes we'll share that, I just had this amazing experience. But we want to share those experiences that validate us. And so if your representative shows up with something, your vibrationally intelligent perspective knows that what that needs in order to calm that feeling down is recognition for it. I see you. I apologize. If you're in customer service, You know, the best way is to not argue with the customer. Is that you go in and say, whatever the experience is, I apologize that that was your experience. How can I make it right? I apologize. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. And so the please forgive me is that I have allowed it. I'm the vibrationally intelligent perspective. So there's a part of me that allowed you to run off with these stories. That I'm in control of my vessel. You're not in control of the vessel. You work for me. You're my representative. So please forgive me. But I do love you. I love you because you are my barometer. You help me to know where my holes are. You help me to know where my buttons and my triggers are. So I love you and I appreciate you. And I do respect you and I thank you. And I need you to know that now so you can stop acting out. Let's deal with it right now. You're acknowledged. Now we can move on. We can get rid of that. Move on to a different story. And so when that story comes up again, guess what? It might not be your story. It might be your grandmother's story or your great-grandmother's story. So the healing is layered. You know, you might not be in trouble. Have you ever sat and you're weeping, you know, and you don't know I don't even know why I'm crying. This is like coming from somewhere else. I didn't even know. Something, I watched this movie and now I'm triggered in a whole different way and I cannot stop crying. My husband come in, what's wrong with you? I don't know. I just feel like weeping right now. And it's because it's not I've tapped into a collective trauma. I may have tapped into an ancestral trauma. I don't need to know what the trauma is, but I know that I can heal it. In my spirit, I can heal it. And I can go through this step to release that from me so that I can have a clear state, so that I can then be uplifted again, so I can be in right relation, recalibrate myself in a way. And it's nothing, I mean, it just takes practice. And like I said, I'm just giving you just a nugget of this. It goes the pool is, we just in the wading pool, y'all. We're not even in the deep end of the pool. This pool is real deep. It's like ocean deep. You can study this and become an expert in this. But the piece that I would caution you is don't become such a knowledge expert that you forget to live the experience. Practice it in your heart. Practice the way that I don't teach anything that I don't know, that I haven't done myself or experienced in some way. So I teach out of the clarity of my experience. But I won't share with you anything that I don't know. I'm not a sound therapist. So if I need some vibrational, I go to my husband because he knows how to do that. And so that leaves me room to be able to do other things, other creative stuff. And that's why collaboration is so good. That's why we need everybody at the table, because everybody's got a different take and a different view and a different way to say something and to get, new ideas are birthed out of the diversity of ideas. So that's why it's important. When you only got people who reflect you sitting around talking to you, of course you just basically, this is your parade. This is all about you. And so you create your own little collective consciousness because you've got only in your orb are people who agree with you, who think like you, who look like you, who sound like you, who live in the world like you. There's no challenge. So it's easy, but that's not how you expand. Being around people who are just like you is easy. But if you want to really live and grow, you've got to change that. You've got to open it up to people who may not think exactly like you and may have a different perspective. And I sit around with a lot of different people and some I don't agree with. But I can keep looking. It's like, okay, why would God think that? I wonder what happened. This is an interesting perspective. Wow, I never thought of it that way. And if I can't agree, I will send love. It's like, wow, that feels like there's a wound in their heart. And I wonder what happened. And usually there is some trauma somewhere in there where the story went awry. You know, when we see all of these, you know, people who do horrendous things that are amplified in our culture, you know, what their representative or their attorney will say, well, you know, he was abused when he was a kid. Or, you know, this happened to him. He was in trauma. Well, we know something traumatic had to happen, because you wouldn't be eating people's bodies or dismembering people if you didn't have some kind of trauma going on, or some kind of something cellularly or chemically going on that's wrong or off. So we already know that. But if it was something that you are experiencing when you're in a state of hate, reason people cling to their hate so much. I love James Baldwin, and I'm going to share this, try to share this quote with you as I do this attempt to share my screen. Y'all bear with me. I'm going to get this right at some point. But let me find this quote real quick, and so that I can share it, because I don't want to misquote him. And basically, let's see, make sure this is in this slide deck. I'm sure it is, because I love James Baldwin. Here it is. All right, so let me figure out how to share this with you. Hold on. Y'all are so patient. Thank you so much. All right, so share screen. And this is the desktop. I'm working on 2 desktops, y'all. I'm so fancy. And presenters view and share. All right. So can you see that? Wonderful. Awesome. And it says that James Baldwin says that if you want to, man, this brother was hooked into the vibrationally intelligent perspective pretty much all the time he wrote. And he had such capacity for so much love for humanity. During a time, he was ahead of his time, people would always say, but James Baldwin was very thoughtful because, and I think when you read his work, you can tell he was outside of the collective consciousness when he wrote it, because he was very much connected to his heritage, his cultural group, but he could, you know, I think there's one quote that he says that, you know, I love America, and because I love her, I can criticize her, I can critique her out of my love for her. And so, you know, if you ever get a chance, you can even just look up on Google, my other best friend, Google. Google and YouTube are my 2 best friends. And if you just Google quotes by James Baldwin, that would take you on a whole nother ride, just being poured into some of the thoughtfulness that he had around race relations. But he was, one quote that I love is he says, I imagine that one of the reasons people cling to their hate so stubbornly is because they sense once hate is gone, then they'll be forced to deal with the pain. And I believe that. I believe that people, you know, when you talk to people who are very adamant and protective about and staunch in their beliefs, is that they are, at the bottom root of that is usually some kind of pain. And in that pain, rather than go into the pain, that's like people who will, rather than going to the doctor to get, you got a toothache, and rather than going to the dentist, I'm not gonna go to the dentist, I'm gonna do everything, I'm gonna eat on the other side of my mouth, I'm gonna do everything other than to go into that, because I don't want to deal with the pain. So I'm gonna stubbornly stick with whatever it is, because I don't want to deal with the pain. But even on the other, but knowing, maybe not consciously knowing, that on the other side of pain is freedom, and that the pain is just temporary. We can't grow without pain. We cannot grow. And most of us will avoid pain at all costs. We don't want to feel uncomfortable. I don't want to make you, so we project that onto other people. I don't want to make them feel bad. I don't want to make them feel bad, so I'm not going to say nothing. I'm not going to be myself because I don't want to make them uncomfortable. Because we want to avoid pain and discomfort at all costs. But that's the juicy part. That's where the growth is. That's that friction that allows for growth. But if we never go there, then how will we? How will we grow? You know, there's one other thing that I want to share with you, and that's there was this, and before we close, man, I can't believe that the time has gone so fast. I should have made this an 8 hours, y'all. Would y'all be able to hang with me for 8 hours? Niambi for 8 hours. Lord have mercy. The Niambi, it'd be like the Niambi marathon. Y'all go to bed and I'm still talking. You come back and I'm still on. Because I got so much information so that's why I need a school, y'all. I really need to set up a school so that I can get all of this information out of me and share it so that I can go on and do some other things. But one of the things that actually I'd like to at least end this, I'm going to end the recording after this, and then you all can stick around and we can stick around and for the rest of the time, and then hopefully you will join me on Wednesday. I'll be I hope you can use the same Zoom thing to get back into the room, that the same Zoom ID. If not, I'll send you a new link. And then we'll be able to there's no agenda and it's not mandatory, but it's just, I don't want to leave you hanging because I didn't give you an opportunity to really talk through this. But if there are things that you want to share, if there's things that you still have questions about, we'll do, I'm setting aside intentional time where I'll be focused and present on Wednesday and Thursday, Eastern Standard Time from 7 to 8 o'clock. And then if something bursts from that, where we need to continue the conversation, we'll deal with it from there. But I want to kind of close this out a little bit with a video that a friend of mine, and she's on the call, Cal, sent me. It's a video that she shared, and I want to share it with you. And it talks about love. And, you know, we give fear a lot of, fear has all kinds of acronyms, you know, that show up. What is it? False evidence appearing real, and, you know, face everything and run, but it's still fear-based. But we never really come up with acronyms for love. And so I came up with an acronym for love, which is letting our vibration elevate. Because that's really, for me, the true meaning of love is when you letting our vibration elevate, or letting our vibration evolve. Because when you are in an evolved or elevated state, then you can be love. That is devoid of fear. And when you're in a space that is devoid of fear, then the possibilities are endless. There is no separation. I'm back in the ocean consciousness with you when I am in a space of love. So love is just that. And do I do it perfectly? No way. But I am in conscious intention as much as I can to elevate my my consciousness, to letting my vibration elevate so that I can be a vehicle of love. Because that's what this world needs. We keep saying the world needs love. Well, guess what? We it. Ain't nobody else coming to save us. We's it, y'all. So before I close, and I'm not gonna close it, but this will be the last of this presentation, is this quick video, and I just love it. So I'm gonna share it, and I thank Cal for sharing it with me. And y'all know I'm gonna get this straight. But I'm going to take just a second to set it up and make sure that we got the right video. And screen share, getting it down. Goodness, view and share. All right, here we go. Oops.
It's been a long time coming, seeming like we all been running, feeling like the Wild West gunning. Listen to our elders shunning. Flipping on the news feed, talking, all about our problems, shocking. We put on our headphones, walking. We put on our headphones. Where did we all go wrong? Love, 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 love. Where did we all go wrong? All we see is faces, color. All the other is other. Why can't you just be my brother? We don't have to kill one another. All around the world. We are one. All around the world. We are one. Where do we all go wrong? Love, la 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 love, la 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 love, la la la. Where do we all go wrong? La 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 love, la 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 love, la la la. Where do we all go wrong? We got the same blood. Yeah, we got the same blood. Will it be enough? Will it be enough? We got the same heartbeat. We're living for the same dreams. We got the same bloodstream. Where did we all go wrong? See that gasoline. See that gasoline. See that gasoline. Where do we all go wrong? Where we all belong. Where did we all go wrong?
And I just want you to see the end so that you can see where it is. And it's playing for change. And they're playingforchange.com. All right. And so to close this out, what I would suggest, or just last words, is to, whenever you encounter someone else, that if you would take a moment and just think about that, wow, that is divine source, that is God expressing itself. What is it that I can learn from that expression? What is it that that expression is showing up to teach us or to teach me? What is it that I can learn from that experience? Or maybe it's showing up so there's something that I need to heal, that I'm healing it for the collective of, maybe once I heal it, then I put that healing in the collective consciousness and we all get healed. So something to think about, that anytime we encounter each other, if we could encounter each other from our vibrationally intelligent perspective rather than our representative, because you know when you're in your representative, that's like your attorney. You know when you're talking to an attorney, and you know when you're being in your data mind. in that what some people call your monkey mind that just got all kinds of stuff going on. It just won't, it's full of data and stuff. And you feel overwhelmed and confused because it's not clarity. When you want clarity, you have to step in your vibrationally intelligent perspective. So that's all I got for now, y'all. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being a part of this. And I hope you'll all come back and be a part of this with me on Wednesday and Thursday. And I promise I won't mute you. And we still have a few minutes. We got like 4 minutes, and I'm going to stop the recording here.